Welcome everyone. Welcome to Kitchen Table Creativity. I'm Donna Leffler, and today I have a super fun and patriotic project for you. And it's an American flag with fireworks, and of course it's in my kind of folk art whimsical style with the beautiful flowers on the hill. This year we are celebrating in the United States the 250th year of independence, and so it's going to be a big celebration all over the place in the States here. And so I thought I would paint this mainly for fun. I'm probably going to keep it in my journal, but you could always use it as a card for someone, especially maybe if their birthday is around that time. My daughter's birthday is actually on July 8th, and so I could put this in a card for her, maybe right on the back. And it's just really colorful and fun. So let me go over my supplies really quick. First of all, I'm going to be using my same palette that I started using called Heart and Home. These are Daniel Smith paints. You can use whatever watercolor paints you have on hand, whatever supplies you have on hand. You don't have to run out and get anything super special for this project. The colors are pretty basic. So I'm going to start with the red and then the blue. These are kind of true red and blues. And then I have the sap green, I have this bright yellow, and this is actually a brown color, which I'm going to use for diluted way down for the flagpole. And then I have my spiral bound journal that I've been using. I will have all of this in the description. If you just click on more, it will open up all the information under the description of what I'm using today. It's good to have a scrap of watercolor paper on hand so you can test your paints if you need to, just to see how diluted or how thick they are. I always like to have a rag or paper towel on hand for blotting. And I'm, as always, going to trace this image. And so I have a image already here, which is in black and white lines and super easy to trace. So I have that also in the description. If you click on that link, it'll open a PDF. And you can print it out, you can cut it out to a smaller size like this. Very easy to center, totally fine to trace this. In fact, for beginners, I really recommend that you do that. It just takes away a lot of the stress of trying to draw something, make sure it's straight, make sure it looks balanced, all of that. So go ahead and trace it if you want. And I have my ceramic mixing palette here, which I love ceramic. Very easy to mix your paints. I have a spray water bottle, just pure water, which I'm going to spray my paints and get them ready. I have a stylus here, and I'm going to trace it using graphite paper. So I'll just have that cut to size, put that face down, the dark side down, and use the stylus to trace. And then I have two very small brushes here because I like to work in these small projects. They're just really easy to complete, and they give you a sense of accomplishment. You know, you finish it in within an hour for sure, and then you can move on to something else, which is why I like to keep the project small. I have a number 1 and it's actually a 0 brush. These are very small brushes. Again, use whatever you have on hand. But if you're working in a small project like this, of course, small brushes are good to have. Then I'm going to use these permanent ink micron pens. I have a 005 and a 05. Again, use what you have, but if you're going to use something to do outlining, make sure it's permanent ink because that way it won't smear for sure. And then I have this Sharpie paint pen, which I probably will use because I think for the stars, I'm probably going to use the paint pen. And I also have another paint pen here that I might try. I use this one sometimes when it's smaller. This is a Mitsubishi, made by Mitsubishi. It's a Uniball, and that's a white pen. Then I have 3 jars of water here. I like to have 3 jars on hand. The first one is for when the brush is really dirty to rinse it, and then rinse it again in the second. And then by the time you get to the third, your brush is pretty clean, and you don't have to keep getting up to get water. Okay, so I'm going to start by tracing this image, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have my image traced now, and I always say you don't have to draw in every single thing that's on that image. If you feel fine with freehanding leaves or petals on flowers. You don't have to necessarily draw them. Sometimes I just make a little dot, and I actually did that with the stars in this. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. But I just put little dots instead of stars on there because to hand draw stars probably would have been a little bit more tricky. So again, it's so much easier to trace when you're just beginning and you're starting out with any kind of art, actually. Now, again, if you feel confident with sketching and you want to just hand sketch this, totally fine. Or even if you just want to freehand the whole thing, totally fine to do that too. And it's kind of good to just practice and experiment with different ways of painting and drawing. So to start out with, I'm going to just go with my very small brush, and I'm going to get that wet. And I already wet this red paint, and normally I would say it's better to start with the light colors, like I would start with yellow, but in this image there's so much red that I decided I'm just going to go with the red to start out with, because that's going to kind of anchor the whole painting for me. And the yellow is actually, I mean, the ground has yellow mixed in with the green, but there's a lot less yellow, mainly just the centers of the flowers. And so I'll go back and put those in after I finish painting the main elements in red. All right, so I think I'm just going to start with these little flowers. And I want this red to be really vivid, so I'm not really watering it down very much at all. Sometimes you might want to, well, often I say water your paints way down, start with something very light. But I don't really want anything to look pink in this painting. I want it to be this vivid red, because for the flag colors, the vivid red, I don't think that the pink would really work very well. It would probably kind of clash with it. So I'm thinking, what are some ways that I could use this? And one of the things that I love to do the 4th of July is have a barbecue, as so many people do. So I could always take this and put a little frame on it, or take it out of this book and just kind of prop it up. And it could be a little decoration for my table. Or like I said, I could make it into a card, but I don't normally give cards for the 4th of July. And so many years we celebrated my daughter's birthday on the 4th of July because her birthday is the 8th and we were just getting together with family anyway. But I think now that she's older, we like to kind of just make it her special day and not try to combine it with other holidays. And it's kind of funny because our whole family, our birthdays kind of hover around holidays. I have twin boys, identical twins, and their birthday is November 17th. And so a lot of times we would celebrate their birthday during Thanksgiving. And I kind of started making it really special for them by saying that we would set up the Christmas tree for their birthday. And then we would do that after celebrating Thanksgiving, usually on the weekend after Thanksgiving. So that was fun. I still think of that every year. And then my daughter's 4th of July. Those are our 3 children. And then my husband and I are both in September. And so his is like the first day of fall, end of September. Mine is more towards Labor Day. So same kind of thing. We don't really celebrate those holidays as much, but just, I guess it's kind of funny. I love the seasons, and so that's why really everything that I do, including my artwork and what I teach, kind of revolves around the seasons. And just the different ways that we celebrate for different times of year. I think it's really super fun. So I'm just kind of filling in these flowers, just making them kind of solid. I really don't, today I feel like I want these solid. I don't really want to try to put shading in them or make them look realistic at all. I want this to look fun and whimsical and just kind of like celebration time. And another thing that I'm doing right now, I'm working on some potted plants for my patio. And I got 5 pots at the nursery yesterday. They're pretty big pots. And I'm going to make plant flowers in them and put them on the patio. And I already have the drip line hoses all set up and ready. And so I guess I'm just like in the mood for flowers right now too. Okay, so I'm going to do those 3 red. Then I'm actually going to work on these little hearts also. And this brush, like I said, it's like a 0. It's very, very tiny for this fine detail work. Now, if you don't want yours this small, you can try enlarging that PDF file that I have, and you can make it bigger. And it might be a little bit easier to paint when it's a little bigger. For some people. I enjoy the small detail work. All right, now let me see. I think I'm going to go straight into the stripes on the flag. And for this, if I wasn't recording this, I would probably be rotating my paper, because I feel like it would be a lot easier for me to put this paint over here. It would be a lot easier for me to rotate my paper and paint these. But because I'm recording, I'm wanting to keep it all in one field here and not have it go off camera. So you might find it easier to rotate your paper to get these lines straight. And if they are not perfectly straight, don't worry. It's supposed to look hand done. But I think one of the things with this kind of painting, especially when it's small like this, is getting lines straight. And feeling like if something's crooked, it's not right. But then, like I always say, there's always ways to fix things and make them look right. So don't worry if you go out of the lines a little bit. We can use the black marker to outline, and that makes it very forgiving. I have another tutorial out there that I did a while ago, and it's a beach chair. And it has stripes on it like this, but they're more vertical instead of horizontal like this. So you might want to look at that and get some more practice in painting lines or stripes. And because I want this to be really dark red, you can see I have to keep dipping into my paint, because if I add more water, it's going to water it down too much probably. So you're probably going to have to, if you're doing the same kind of thing where you want it to be dark, you're probably going to have to go over it a few times. And, you know, another thing you could do, in fact, I think I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to water this down a little bit more. And if it ends up looking too pink, I can always go back over it. another layer, which is probably going to make it a little bit easier. And I always say, you know, when I paint, I do these tutorials, I figure out what I'm going to paint, you know, then I print it out and I create that first. And then I just sit down and record it and start painting. So I don't like come on here and practice and try to make it all perfect. I just kind of go with it. So sometimes it doesn't go exactly the way that I want it to. And sometimes I learn something, which is fine. Always good to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn, so I'm always looking at new things, and I love the whole internet, the whole world of AI now. I look at that a lot. It's just very interesting and fun. Okay, now I'm going to leave that for a bit to dry. And the white stripes, I'm just going to leave the white stripes as the color of the paper. And then I'll see if I want to add more white with the pen after. Now these little fireworks, it's pretty much like every other one of these is red. And then the other ones are blue, but I don't think it's really going to matter that much. I think it's just kind of random. Put the red where you want it. Then we're going to add the rest of them in with blue. Using just the very fine tip of your brush to make these little wispy fine lines. Okay, and let me see if there's anything else on here. I think that's pretty much it. All right, so now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to kind of outline these stripes a little more. So instead of trying to get everything all perfect the first time, you might want to just fill it in and then come back and go back over it. Sometimes I even wait until it's totally dry, then I come back again, have a look at it, and maybe there's some areas that I want to add something to. Sometimes when it dries, it looks different. And sometimes you see things that you didn't see the first time. Okay, so I like the way this has turned out now, and I am going to move on now to the blue. All right, so now I'm going to take this blue, which I have again already added some water to, made it wet, and I'm going to use this pretty much full strength also. This is where you might want to take your paper and just make sure, I like that blue, that it's the right consistency, the right color. And I'm just going to start with these little flowers. Now you could do this whole entire painting in pastels too if you don't want to go with these vivid colors. And that would be fine. It would actually be kind of fun. Let me try that. And this is a different style of flower. It's not really a daisy. I'm actually trying to learn the names of plants and flowers since I planted a little vegetable garden and so many varieties of vegetables. I had no idea. I haven't done that in a long time. And my vegetable garden is actually doing quite well. I've already got a couple of cucumbers, little tomatoes. I've been eating the arugula, which I absolutely love. I have this huge amount of arugula just growing prolifically. I've never done that before, so really enjoying that, those bitter kind of herby plants. I have some leaf lettuce. I had that this morning. I like to have those greens with eggs in the morning. So I'm learning the plants, learning how to grow them. I have 3 raised planter beds, which are amazing. And I figured if the vegetables don't, this is the first year I'm planting, if the vegetables don't do so well, I could always plant flowers, and I have some marigolds in there that are doing really, really well. So I could always go back and the next year plant flowers, just flowers. I would love that. All right, so I'm going to leave this kind of thick and full as far as the not diluting it. And I'm going to do the rest of these little fireworks lines. And not to worry if you go out of the lines a little bit with these, because we're probably going to use the black pen a little bit on them. And you can always erase. If you use the waxless graphite paper, you can erase. And that's what I like to use. The first time I used graphite paper, I just bought whatever I found on Amazon, and it did not erase. I could not erase it. So I do recommend when you're starting to go with the erasable, because it's a little bit more forgiving again. And then I think I'm going to just go ahead and fill this whole entire area in. I'm not going to worry too much about leaving it white for the stars, because I think it would actually be a lot easier to just go ahead and use the white pen for the stars. Now, for this, I could have probably switched to the bigger brush, but since I'm already almost done with it, I'm just going to stay with this one. All right, and there are some little dots around here, and I'm going to show you a technique that I learned recently. In fact, I think I'll do that right now because I have this little brush. So what I'm going to do is put a bunch of paint in here, thick blue. And I'm actually going to rinse this brush now. Rinse the bristles. Get the excess water off of it. And then I'm going to start with the other side. And I'm going to put this the side without the bristles. And I'm going to make little dots like this. And so you can do this a lot easier than using it with your the bristles, is what I found. And I just learned this technique recently. It's kind of like Just quick and easy little dots. And they're just kind of fun and whimsical. Just kind of randomly put them around. And it's fine if they're different sizes. I think they should be actually different sizes. All right, and I think while I'm doing this, I'm actually gonna go back to this red and same thing. Put some little dots in red also. Just a few. So with this new, I shouldn't say new style, the style that's evolving, this kind of folk art style that I do in painting, there's a lot of dots. I like to put dots because they just kind of add a little element of fun, kind of like confetti, I guess. That's what it reminds me of. All right, so I'm going to leave those like that. And now I am going to move into the green. All right, so for the green, I have already gotten it wet. And I think I'm going to maybe water this down a little bit. I'm still using the very small brush. I don't even really know. I don't think I'm going to use the other brush at all. I'm just going to stay with this small one. And I'm going to start with just the leaves. Again, good to kind of test your paint. And I just find these easiest to do by just pulling down from the top. Rest your hand on the table, whatever surface you're working on, and just move your fingers down. And just barely touching the paper. Okay, and then I'm going to just fill in the leaves. And these probably would be good if you varied the color a little bit. You don't have to, but you could leave some of them. Maybe water your paint down like this and make some of the leaves a little bit lighter green. And again, just by varying some of the colors, it adds interest so that everything isn't just completely flat, same color. These would be really easy to freehand if you wanted to just not trace everything. And I love the way that this fills in with the green. It just, to me, it has a really fun kind of storybook look to it when you have a lot of leaves. It's fun. So I always say, paint what makes you happy. Doesn't really have to have a purpose. You know, lots of times they say, well, it could be a card, it could be hung up. This could be something that you just do just for fun, just to practice, just to relax and enjoy the time that you have with your painting. I think a lot of times we're just so results driven, like it's got to be this way or that way, but it really doesn't have to be. All right, so these 3 flowers I'm going to leave white, but I am going to add just a touch of green to them like this. And I'm going to go back and outline them with the black pen when I'm done, and you'll see that. But first, I just wanted to add a little bit of green to kind of maybe add the look of like some leaves behind. I guess some flowers do have green. Okay, so then, again, it's pretty warm here today, so my paint is drying pretty quickly, but I think I'm just going to go back and add a little bit more dark to some of these leaves. Add a little bit of interest. And then I'm going to take this green and I'm just going to make a very fine line. And this, I'm going to just take some water and kind of blend it down a little bit. Just plain water, rinsing my brush of the green paint, carrying it down just a little bit. And I'm going to add some yellow to that and add a little more detail work. All right, so at this point, I'm going to leave this as is, and I'm going to move on to the flagpole. Okay, so this is my raw umber paint, which is brown. And I'm going to water this down quite a bit because I don't want it to be a dark brown. Now this also would be a good idea to make sure that your other paint is dry. Depending on where you live, if you live in a humid environment, your paints might take a lot longer to dry. Where I live, it's very dry, very low humidity, and so everything dries really quick. Okay. And because this is wood, or I want it to kind of give the illusion of wood, it's pretty uniform right now, so I'm just going to add in a few little areas of darker brown. Kind of make it look like it's wood. And this flagpole is just kind of peeking out there behind that flower. Okay, I'm going to leave that as is. And the last thing now is the centers and the grass, the centers of the flowers. And for these centers, I want it to be maybe not really bright yellow like this. So what I'm going to do is put the bright yellow on my palette. And I'm going to warm it up just a little bit, rinse my brush, and just add a tiny bit of this red to it. And make it more of this orangey yellow, which I think I'm going to like better. Let me see. Yeah, I like that better. So I'm going to go back to each one of these flowers now, and I'm just going to use the same orangey yellow for the centers. Again, good idea to make sure everything is dry when you go in to do this. And I just have a small drop of water fell on that from my brush. So if that ever happens, you can just easily, like I just did, blot it off. Which is why it's good to have some paper towel right next to where you're working. And I think I'm going to actually make these a little bigger. On the white flowers. All right, and then I'm going to take the green, kind of mix some green with this yellow. So I've got like a, and for this I am going to switch to a little bit bigger brush. Be easier to paint. And I'm going to water this way down. And I'm going to kind of just make this a nice background wash. Adding water. Now, on the image that you trace, it probably has like an ending point, which you can add if you want. But I kind of like to just make these blend, like just sort of like disappear on the page. So either way is fine. You can do it like I'm doing it, or if you have like a defined endpoint you've drawn in down here, that's fine too. And I just like to take pure water now, which is what I'm doing. Adding water so it just sort of disappears. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little more darker green at the top. Let the water do the work. Okay. Now I'm going to let this dry, because there's some detail work on the grass, but right now I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to go back and start working on the white stars. All right, so I'm going to use this Sharpie paint pen. It's kind of thick, so I'm not really sure how this is going to work. So I'm going to just, first of all, make sure this is really dry. And I'm going to just do dots to start out with. And that actually works pretty well. Then I think I'm going to take this other paint pen and see if I can make these into little stars, kind of just by spreading that paint, because this is not going to be easy to paint tiny little stars. And again, totally fine if it doesn't really look like a star, because we want it to have kind of a whimsical handmade quality to it. So I'm just kind of using this other paint pen to spread out the Sharpie pen paint, and probably a little bit of white paint is coming out of this pen, but I found these pens, they don't really cover really super well on their own, and because this black background is so dark, blue background is so dark that it's going to show through if I don't do it that way. All right, so I think that's pretty okay. I'm going to leave those stars the way they are. And next I'm going to move on to outlining with the black pen. So before I start with the black pen, I forgot that I wanted to take this green paint again and make some little grassy kind of sprigs in the hill and on the hill. And maybe just make it look like there's some more leaves in here too. And I'm just kind of freehanding this wherever I feel like I want to put a little sprig. And I think probably just to take your brush and hold it straight up and add some dots or little marks, slashes, just to give the hill a little bit more interest. Or you can, like what I showed before, you could use the other side of your pen if you want dots. I mean, the other side of your brush. Alrighty. So now the thing to do is make sure everything is really super dry. And if your stars ended up bleeding, like the blue was bleeding through a little bit, you could touch up those a little bit with white paint. Just make sure everything is dry, and then we're going to go into outlining with the black pen. So for the black pen, I'm going to use the 05 to start out with, black permanent micron pen. And again, if I didn't have a camera on, I would probably rotate my image, but I'm just going to leave it as is so I can keep it in camera. And I think I'm just going to start with the flag. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I call this watercolor sketching, and there's different ways that people do this, but I like to outline my work. Now, if you look at your work right now and you just say, I'm good with it, I like the way it is, you could just leave it. You don't have to do this outlining. Or you can just do parts of your painting. I usually don't outline every single thing. I just outline the things that I really want to kind of pop and stand out. And so I really want the flag to be front and center. And you don't want like a really super thick, heavy line. You just want to kind of go like this, like sketching motion. as if you were drawing it. And I'm going to go ahead and just do this whole, I'm going to leave the stars. I'm not going to outline those, or try to, because they're so small, but I am going to do the stripes. And this is where if you didn't have a perfectly straight stripe and it was kind of bugging you, this is where by outlining it, it's just going to fill in those gaps and it's going to just be finished and perfect. You want it to be a little bit, like I keep saying, handmade looking. You don't want it to be so that it looks like a machine did it. And definitely gonna do these white flowers. Okay. So I think I'm gonna just leave the fireworks as they are, and I have an eraser. So I'm gonna just go ahead and erase some of these pencil lines, the graphite pencil. I wanted them to look like they are just blue and red. Okay. And I am going to go ahead and outline the rest of these flowers with the black pen. So I really want them to stand out. Plus, I think if we just had the white ones outlined and not the rest, it wouldn't look quite right or balanced. And the hearts, the same. Okay, and then I'm going to leave the leaves and the stems as they are, but I am going to add a little bit of detail work. Black pen. Okay, and then I think I'm also going to add just a few more dots to this landscape. All right, so I'm pretty happy with the way this has turned out. Although I do have to say that there is a pretty big mistake on this in this painting, and I don't know if you noticed this. You probably did, especially if you traced your image. And for whatever reason, when I traced this, I did not add the right number of stripes. And there's supposed to be a red stripe at the top, so I think it's okay the way that it turned out. And this is just an example of how, things might not go exactly as you planned, and that's okay. I could totally redo this again, but I'm wondering how many people, unless you're actually following along with me painting this, if you would notice that. Another thing that I'm not like super happy with the way it turned out was that I kind of went over with the pen here, the black pen, a little bit too heavy. And so I'm just going to take a little bit of red paint and go over that. Again, making sure that it's really dry first. And again, like this is pretty minor, like not something that you would have to really worry about. But I like to show how, yeah, I make mistakes and yeah, things don't turn out exactly the way I want them all the time too. And that I could either redo it, I could throw it out. But I think this one is still worthy of keeping, even though it's not exactly the way I wanted it to turn out. I think that it's okay. So the last thing, I always like to sign my work. I put it in the lower right-hand corner almost always. And I put the date. So I hope that you enjoyed this. It was a fun project. It actually was quite detailed, more than I had expected. And so it probably took a little bit longer than a lot of the tutorials that I do. But again, you know, a lot of different things we did here with the dots and the stripes and all. So I think it was worth the time and energy to put into. So I hope you enjoyed it. And come and paint with me online. I have a bunch of things going on. I have a Creative Heart journal that I send out every Friday. And that includes this tutorial, but also a PDF version. It's a little flip book thing that you can look at. It's sort of like a little mini magazine. It's just to inspire creativity. I do that once a week, totally for free. You can sign up, and that link is in the description. And I'm also starting to do live paint-alongs once a month. You can sign up for the next class for that. Also, there's a link in the description. So I hope you enjoyed this, and subscribe to my channel if you want to get different tutorials every single week. And I look forward to painting with you again soon. Have a great rest of your day. Okay, before I go, I have to just say that I did go back and fix what I considered a pretty big mistake and design flaw, and that is I added another little red stripe at the top, and all I did was I painted in a red stripe that was a little bit finer and smaller than the other ones, and I feel like it really does balance the flag. It was bothering me, so I'm letting you know that I make mistakes and that there are ways to fix them. And I think it looks pretty okay the way it is. Some of the stripes are fatter, some of them are a little bit crooked, some are more narrow. And that's kind of the whole vibe, is just this handmade folk art kind of whimsical style. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed seeing how I fix a few mistakes, because a mistake, in my opinion, can always be fixed. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, your night, and I look forward to painting with you again in the next tutorial.